The secret economy of stay-at-home mothers. The coffee had gone cold again, another morning balancing the noise of the house and the quiet question she kept avoiding. Can I really build something of my own? She stared at her reflection in the dark screen of her laptop, closed since yesterday, and felt that familiar weight, the one that sits between exhaustion and longing. She wasn't chasing millions, just freedom. The kind that fits between nap times and school pickups, the kind that doesn't require explaining herself to anyone or apologizing for wanting something beyond the rhythm of routines she'd learned to love and resent in equal measure. But here's what nobody tells you about motherhood and ambition. They don't cancel each other out, they collide. And in that collision, something unexpected can emerge. This is educational content, meant to inspire and inform, not financial advice. Just one mother's story, and the invisible economy she discovered was hiding in plain sight. Part of her still felt guilty for wanting more, as if ambition had to disappear when motherhood began. Society had taught her that well. Be grateful, be present, don't ask for too much. But gratitude and desire aren't opposites. They're twins, both reaching for the same truth. You can honor where you are while building toward where you want to be. She'd read somewhere that millions of women were doing it, turning their homes into quiet empires, one small step at a time. But the idea didn't come from a business book. It came from the mess on her kitchen table. A stack of handmade birthday invitations she'd designed for her daughter's party. 3 friends had asked where she bought them. She hadn't bought them anywhere. She'd made them during stolen moments after bedtime, when the house finally exhaled and she could think clearly. What if that was the answer? Not some revolutionary idea, but the thing she was already doing, the thing people kept noticing. According to recent studies, small home-based businesses led by women are growing 40% faster than other segments, proof that clarity often beats capital. The mothers building these businesses aren't starting with massive investments or business degrees. They're starting with what they already know, what they're already good at, and what their communities actually need. She opened her laptop. The screen glowed back at her, patient and waiting. But doubt crept in quickly, the way it always does when you're about to step into something new. Maybe success just wasn't meant for someone like her, someone who couldn't dedicate 60-hour weeks, or attend networking events, or transform into some polished version of an entrepreneur she'd only seen in ads. Then came the realization, the kind that changes everything. Those women in the ads, they weren't the standard. They were the exception. The real economy of stay-at-home mothers was quieter, smaller, and far more sustainable. She almost gave up, until one message changed everything. A local mom had seen her invitations at the party and wanted to order 50 for a community event. 50. She did the math quickly in her head, the cost of materials, the time, the price she'd charge. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was real. It was hers. She smiled, not because it was easy, but because it was finally hers. The first month was chaos, learning to price her work without undervaluing herself, figuring out how to say no to requests that demanded too much for too little, understanding that boundaries aren't selfish, they're the architecture of sustainability. What would you have done in her place? When the orders started coming faster than she expected, when her kitchen table became a production line, when her daughter asked why Mummy was always working on the computer now, she didn't have perfect answers. She had honest ones. Mommy is building something, she'd say. And her daughter would nod, not fully understanding, but sensing the quiet pride in her mother's voice. Sometimes growth doesn't look like progress. It looks like staying. Staying when the numbers don't add up immediately. Staying when friends suggest she's taking on too much. Staying when the voice in her head whispers that real businesses don't start at kitchen tables, but they do, they always have. Her workspace was still her kitchen counter, but it no longer felt like chaos. It felt like possibility. She started noticing other mothers around her, each running their own invisible operations. The woman who organized virtual book clubs and had quietly built a consulting business around it. The neighbor who turned her love of meal planning into a subscription service for busy families. The former teacher who created educational printables that sold while she slept. This was the secret economy, not hidden, just unnoticed. Operating in the margins of traditional business, fueled by creativity and necessity in equal parts. Research shows that women-led home businesses now represent one of the fastest-growing segments of entrepreneurship globally. They're not just filling gaps in household income, they're reshaping what work looks like, proving that economic contribution doesn't require leaving your values at the door. Then came the doubt, the kind that whispers louder than failure. Her partner asked a simple question: "Is this worth the stress?" He didn't mean it cruelly. He meant it practically. But she heard it differently. She heard, "Maybe you should stop trying." She took a breath, let the question settle, then answered honestly, "I don't know yet, but I need to find out." That honesty became her compass, not blind optimism, but conscious choice. The decision to keep building, not because success was guaranteed, but because the alternative, never knowing what she was capable of, felt worse than any risk. What helped me the most wasn't just Canva Pro. It was realizing that I didn't need permission to start small. I tested a few tools before finding what truly worked, and honestly, it changed everything. Being able to create professional designs without a design degree, to brand my work without hiring expensive help, it removed a barrier I didn't even know how to articulate before. This isn't a promotion, just something that made my path a little lighter. I'll leave the link below if you want to explore it. The turning point came 6 months in, not with some dramatic success, but with a subtle shift in how she saw herself. She stopped introducing her work with apologies. "It's just a little side thing I do," and started owning it. "I run a custom design business from home." The words felt foreign at first, then they felt true. Her income had grown steadily, not exponentially. Some months were strong, others quiet. But the average was climbing, and more importantly, she was learning. Learning to market herself without feeling pushy, learning to manage client expectations, learning that professionalism and authenticity aren't opposites. She started sharing her journey online, not to boast, but to document, to show other mothers that the path doesn't have to be perfect to be valid. Her posts were raw and real. The failed product launches, the awkward client conversations, the nights she questioned everything. And the responses came flooding in. Women thanking her for the honesty, women asking questions, women sharing their own invisible businesses, their own kitchen table empires. A community formed quietly and organically, not a network in the traditional sense, but a collective of women choosing to build differently, choosing to define success on their own terms, choosing to believe that motherhood and entrepreneurship could coexist without one diminishing the other. One woman wrote, "I thought I was the only one feeling guilty for wanting more." Another said, "Your story gave me permission to start." A third, "I've been running my business for 2 years and never called myself an entrepreneur until reading this." That last comment struck her the hardest. How many women were out there building incredible things, but refusing to claim the title because they didn't fit some imagined standard? The data backs this up. Studies show that women consistently underestimate their business achievements and are far less likely than men to identify as entrepreneurs, even when running successful ventures. The gap isn't in capability, it's in recognition, in permission, in the simple act of naming what you do. She started thinking bigger, not about scaling infinitely, but about scaling intentionally. What if she taught other mothers her process? What if the real business wasn't just the designs, but the knowledge she'd gained building it? The idea scared her. Who was she to teach anyone? She didn't have an MBA or a massive success story, just 2 years of trial and error and steady growth. But maybe that was exactly what made her qualified, not despite her ordinary path, but because of it. She launched a small workshop, 5 mothers, meeting virtually once a week. They covered pricing, marketing, boundaries, and the emotional labor of entrepreneurship that nobody talks about. The imposter syndrome, the mom guilt, the fear of being seen. By the end, all 5 had either launched or refined their businesses. One started a virtual assistant service, another turned her organizing skills into a consultation business, a third began selling handmade children's clothing. Each different, each authentic, each viable. She realized then that the secret economy wasn't really secret. It was just invisible to those who weren't looking for it. The traditional business world measured success in venture capital and hockey stick growth and exit strategies. But here, in the margins, mothers were measuring differently, in autonomy, in flexibility, in the pride of building something meaningful alongside raising tiny humans. When she poured her coffee the next morning, it was still hot, because this time she wasn't rushing. She was building. And for the first time in years, those two states didn't feel like contradictions. They felt like the same thing. Her daughter wandered in, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is today a work day, Mama?" "Every day is a work day, sweetheart, but every day is also a you day." The child accepted this logic without question, the way children do. And maybe that was the lesson all along. Work and life don't have to be balanced like opposing weights. They can be woven together, messy and imperfect and real. The mothers in her workshop kept in touch. They celebrated each other's wins. The first sale, the difficult client conversation handled well, the moment they finally felt like they deserved to be paid for their expertise. They held space for each other's doubts too, the setbacks, the slow months, the moments when it all felt too hard. This is what the secret economy runs on, not just individual effort but collective support. The understanding that you don't have to do it alone, even when you're doing it from home. Tell us what part of her story resonated with you most, and where you're watching from. Your journey might just inspire the next one. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.